say the customer is always right. We start out.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone expected special treatment just because they were paying?
I think that especially when money is involved and there's a transaction happening, I think in most cases, people have a certain level of expectation. Now, when we talk about special treatment, it's usually in balance to what is being paid for something, right? I think going out to eat is often one of those things that I can think of where there's an expectation of a level of quality and level of service when you are paying for the meal, because you're also paying for an experience when you're dining in at a restaurant. And so I think that there have been several times where there was an expectation of meeting what my expectation should be for any given situation. What's interesting now is Naya is working, and she works at our local Panera Bread. She gets tips. And Panera Bread is not a typical dine-in restaurant. And so I never tipped at a takeout restaurant. Even if I was sitting down to eat at Panera Bread, I've never tipped before. But she comes home and she has these stories, and she's always talking about how people expect for her to come and bring them something if they ask for it. And I'm like, oh, really? I didn't think about it in that way. But lots of people tip. So there's probably this expectation of, I want what I'm paying for. And if I'm tipping you extra money as a waitress, then I'm expecting for you to do the work of a waitress, even though she's really paid to stand there and take someone's order. So what about you? Have you ever been in a situation where someone expected special treatment just because they were paying?
I worked at Pizza Hut, so it was always making the customer happy. If they don't like it, you just remake it and move on or give them something free, and I've worked in restaurants before where that was the case, where the manager will go out and give them a free meal if they complain.
Well, what about situations where you knew someone was wrong, but it felt like you still had to agree with them?
I've had that before. Yeah, so definitely. And especially in those type of situations where somebody's paying for an experience. I know it is really interesting to think about Disney in this regard, because like the customer service that they provide. Every time I've been to a Disney park, they put on their customer service is the top, and they just take care of you to such a degree. So it would be interesting to see how they deal with disagreements. Or
it's interesting that you say that, because I actually do have a story from Disney. I've only gone when the kids were young, so I was overwhelmed as a mother in an amusement park. Yes, but we didn't plan it right, and we were supposed to do a character lunch, but the kids had kind of petered out before the lunchtime became available, the time that we had scheduled. And it was supposed to be no cancellations. And so I went and I'm like, listen, look at the kids. They're asleep in the stroller. You don't want me to wake them up to try to come in here and eat right now. That wouldn't work for anybody. And so they did give me a hard time at first, but then they ended up saying, okay, yes, we'll refund you. And, don't worry about it. If it works out later, just try to reschedule. But that was something that I guess they did go above and beyond in that situation, because they had my money already. I had to prepay before the appointment. So, yeah.
I think they know, not just Disney, but I think companies know if they treat you right, that you will come back and spend more money. So if they do give you a free meal, it is a immediate expense, but maybe you'll go tell 2 other people that you had,
long-term impact is going to be better for the company. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The bottom line is always where.
Yes. Hey, that's the focus. How much more money can we get from this person?
Exactly, yeah. Hello, curious minds.
Welcome to Quote Mining,
The bite-sized podcast where each week we explore where quotes come from by stepping inside
and shining a light around to see what's buried beneath the surface, see how they shape the way we connect, and whether they hold up in real life.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Leslie.
Some quotes shine immediately.
And some require excavation.
We bring the questions.
You bring your curiosity.
Ready?
Let's start mining. Today's quote is, "The customer is always right."
The origin of "the customer is always right" is contested, with attributions to Marshall Field in 1881 in Chicago and Harry Gordon Selfridge in the early 1900s. and Caesar Ritz. And the original quote is recognized as the customer is always right in the matters of taste.
So this means that the customer knows what they prefer, but that doesn't mean that they're always correct about policies, safety, or how businesses should operate. So in short, respect and take note of the customer's preferences, but don't confuse taste with truth. We use it today as a weaponized rebuttal, but in reality, that's not how it was originally meant.
So businesses do succeed when they balance good service with clear boundaries. Knowing the quote, does that change how you understand it?
I think it does make me stop and think a little bit more about, especially when we weaponize that phrase, the customer is always right. In education, sometimes we refer to students as customers, which I honestly don't agree with. But in saying that, there's this push that the customer is always right. And so what the customer wants, we have to provide. Whereas if we go back to what this quote actually means in its totality, in its wholeness, then policies, how we operate, a lot of what we are offering and the way that we're delivering that offering, that might be a little different than that hard line of the customer is always right.
Yeah, it's my view of the customer is always right is maybe a little bit different than what some people might think. I don't know if it was just me convincing myself when I worked in that type of environment, but I feel like people are lonely and they feel like they need to be heard. And sometimes I feel like when somebody is angry with a service, like really what they're trying to get is to be heard. Like maybe they're not heard in their personal life, or maybe they're not heard in general. So when they're in this customer service situation, they have a person that's kind of trapped in front of them that they have to have this conversation with. What do you think about that?
Well, I hear that because it's almost like saying that what's happening is almost a meta message, right? It's not really the message, the words that they're saying. It has more to do with the fact that they're just trying to be understood about something and wanting to be listened to or heard in life. And they have this opportunity to be heard, to be listened to, and so they're going to take it. So yeah, I think I can respect that perspective, and I think there's a time and a place for that perspective. Yeah,
and I think it's for different people, because I've had customer service issues where I fall into this customer service loop where you call a person and then they push you on to the next person, and then it just kind of loops back around, and you don't actually ever get an answer, and it's very frustrating because they act like they're treating you well, but they just keep passing you next person to the next person.
So then you also don't feel understood or heard in those situations because you've been passed around and no one has taken the time to really take note and hear you, which does lead to more frustration. I agree. So it sounds like we're also saying that it's not necessarily a priority for the customer for them to actually be right, but it is a priority for the customer for them to be listened to and valued in that space.
I'm trying to think about both sides of it, like when I've been a customer, but also when I'm trying to provide customer service. And I think it's very hard to provide good customer service to a degree because usually the person that you're talking to is not a decision maker. They're the front lines and they can't make your dreams come true.
No,
like,
they cannot.
They need to pass you to the next level.
Yeah.
So it's almost like get me to a person that can make a decision so I can have this conversation with them and it's no fault of the first line level employee. That's what they were hired to do. But they can't provide good customer service because they weren't given the tools to do it. I guess I've thought about this more than I thought I had.
Yes, you have. You've got like real deep opinions about this.
Talking to friends and family members about terrible experiences they've had, thinking about the customer is always right and how to align those two things.
Because at the end of the day, it's less about winning an argument and more about understanding perspective. So I think the next time you hear the phrase, the customer is always right, we have to question, what do you think is really being said in that moment? What's really being communicated?
This has been Quote Mining.
Respect preferences, question assumptions,
And hold your ground when it counts. We don't just repeat quotes,
we examine them because words matter.
but meaning matters more.
This has been Quote Mining.
Until next time,
Don't just repeat the quote,
question it
test it,
and keep mining.